First of all, the non-stupid way of doing this is wait for the giant chain chomp to do its first little meow, and then wait patiently because then it will have a longer timer before it does its next little meow, at which point Mario has plenty of time to grab the mushroom, casually dodge the wrenches, and get out of there. It's equally easy to climb up the vines because there are plenty of safe spots in the vines themselves to dodge the wrenches. So this first section is a lot easier than I originally thought it was. This next section unfortunately is very slow and unskippable. Something like this is usually best to put right before a checkpoint so that once the player sees this, they only have to see it once. Especially since we have to do so much beyond this part. If we continuously die, we have to sit through this every time, which is not something I would typically recommend for a level design. So this section we can run and immediately hit the on-off switch, and actually the cannon Galoombas have nothing to do with the key. As I was making my video, I discovered this horrifying fact that all we have to do is destroy the lowly defenseless Galoomba, get our key, and get through the section. This next section, if you notice, if you do not hit the switch fast enough, the cannon Galoombas, which are actually needed for this section, will walk off the ledge and wander off, and this section will actually now be impossible to pass. Unfortunately, if we miss the boat on this section, we can't use the door for a reset because we will instantly be killed by the Galoomba. So something that I would recommend for this is either rework the section so that we don't have to have an on-off switch, or make a contraption in our key room to force the on-off switch to be in a specific configuration before we go into that key door. The platforms in this room are perfectly fine, it just takes some actually good platforming skill to pull off. The wrench section. Oh, good lord, the wrench section. The thing is, there is a fine line between difficult and fair. No matter how difficult a course might be, there has to be a semblance of fairness in it, otherwise if it's too unfair, the hardness very quickly turns to frustration. And I think this section, due to the fact that the ceiling in each individual section are too small, we cannot use any sort of player skill to get past this section. We have to rely on good RNG, favorable wrench positioning. Some of the wrench patterns are plain and simply impossible to avoid. So something that I probably would have wanted to change in this is to make each individual section a little bit of a higher ceiling so that the player at least has a chance to exude skill to dodge the wrenches. Going down is considerably easier considering we get to start right there at the checkpoint, but we still have to unfortunately have some favorable RNG for the wrench positions. And actually, fun fact, the helmet is not even required and we can completely skip this puzzle section. The cheesed key is actually only possible if you die after the first checkpoint. And so if we buzz through this section, hitting the off switch and making sure that we blow the POW before that Galoomba that has the key walks off screen, we can actually obtain the cheese key right here. And then of course execute a nice duck slide so that we can go in the door whilst retaining our mushroom, which we will need to cheese an upcoming section. Here we can put on a shellmet as well as grab an extra one, do a duck jump up through the saw so that we can make it into this area that we're totally supposed to be in, run merrily to the left, blow the POW which destroys the muncher blocking our way. We have to very accurately do a run and duck slide so that we can damage boost, but only with our shellmet back through the saw, at which point we can put on another shellmet. If we don't get this, we will get shrunk, and therefore our mushroom cheese will break and we'll have to restart from the checkpoint. We do have to execute a very tight, tricky little duck slide to get Big Fat Mario underneath this little section, as well as dodge tons of projectiles, bombs, and icicles while we use the bomb to blow up the ice. And we don't even need the bomb cheese because we're big, so once we drop down on the donut blocks, we can just directly spin jump on these switch blocks and proceed in the level itself. To save time, before we drop down, we have to make sure that the red switch is off and that the blue switch is on. That way the Gloomba here is going to be already walking across the screen. It's very unfortunate, the mechanics of Super Mario Maker, that does not respawn a bomb inside the note block. So really we only have one shot to do this part as well. The P-switch section is good design because if we run out of time, that block is permanently destroyed, and by going back in the door, it will activate another P-switch timer. Second, if we don't quite make it all of the way and don't get in the pipe, we actually fall back down to safety. Honestly, this is a really nicely designed boss fight room. However, it does have a lot of projectiles on screen. That does make it harder to get through it without dying, so that I can use either the cheesed key or the cheesed shelmet, which would actually allow me to reach the very end with the fire power-up. I was able to discover a pretty cool dodging pattern of being able to jump safely and precisely through the various projectiles on the ground below. The placements are pretty good so that you have plenty of space to actually dodge the rings. And then by the time you get up to the top level, again, it does take some tricky and precise movements and jumps, but it is absolutely possible and not completely dependent on bad RNG. Wouldn't you know it, it is actually possible to get soft lock on this screen. Oops. If you get hit and lose your fire power up before you gain access to the exit pipe and then kill off every single Koopa on the screen, then there is no way for you to die except timeout. If you were able to retain your shelmet, you could actually get past these ceiling spikes, at which point you could then access the final area of the game and have a fire power up so that you could ice block excavate into the unknown.